Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm so incredibly pleased to see so many people. I'm very surprised. I was afraid that it was just going to be me. Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's wonderful so many people came, because I think what I'm going to talk about is the most important thing in the world. So, you know, listen up. This concerns all of us, and it's becoming a passion of mine to talk about these things with people, because I find it incredibly important that we all start relating to these things. Our future, the technologies that will shape our future, the ways we will interact socially are going to change dramatically within the next decades, and I promise you that within all of our lifetimes we will see radical change in society. So, taking the pulse of time, that's where we start. I want to address, first of all, the speed, the increasing speed of change we're witnessing. How come can this be that everything seems to go so fast and faster and faster when we're used to an evolutionary history for humanity that is extremely slow, with millions and billions of years between changes of paradigm? So that's what we're going to start talking about. Then we're going to zoom in on a few technologies. Then we're going to zoom out on all of the technologies that are important. And then for the second part of the lecture, we're going to talk about the mentality that I feel is important to focus on right now. So if you don't mind, I welcome you 4.6 billion years ago. This is where we start today. Because I think there's a theory called the telescopic effect of evolution, and I think it's important to take notice of this when looking at the time we live in, where things are going fast, because maybe the answer to why it's going so fast could be in evolution itself. So we start zooming a lot out, 4.6 billion years ago, when the solar system and our planet took shape for the first time. Then nothing happened for 2.6 billion years. We can't even relate to this, you know. We think there's a long time until next week. Like 2.6 billion years, officially the most boring time in human history, whatever. It's nothing happened. Then life emerged 2 billion years ago. Then again, 1.6 billion years, nothing really happened. And then animals came along. Then 200 million years ago, mammals. 6 million years ago, the ape man, and 100,000 years ago, man, the more or less recognizable man as we know it. And here you see the telescopic effect, where there's shorter and shorter time spans between radical changes of paradigm on Earth. And what's important to note here is that whenever this happens, what happens primarily is an explosion of intelligence. And with intelligence comes complexity. So, 100,000 years ago, man, more or less recognizable. Then 10,000 years ago, agriculture. Man learned to cultivate land. 400 years ago, the scientific revolution. 200 years ago, the industrial revolution. 50 years ago, the information technological revolution. And 10 years ago, the smartphone, which I call the body computer, because this is the first time in human history where we almost are morphing together with technology, and we constantly have a piece of technology, a computer, an external brain on our body as a cognitive expansion, where we constantly have access to exactly the knowledge we need at exactly the time where we need it. And why would you expect that this speed should slow down now, when obviously it's been going on for such a long time, you know? I don't think it's going to. And a good friend of mine, she says that we are the first people in the history of people that are so naive and arrogant that we think we can create change in society and see it manifest within our own lifetime. But I'm here to talk about that it's not about being naive or arrogant, but for a fact, we are the first people in the history of humanity that are so incredibly well connected and have access to so incredibly effective and cheap means of communication that we can organize in scales never seen before and create the change that we demand to see. I call this the power of contemporary consensus. If enough people agree on something, they can make it happen. Nobody has to wait any longer for anyone giving them permission to address local or global challenges that we are facing together. This is our collective future we are talking about. The connectivity makes it incredibly clear that everything we do affects all other people. If they fuck up the Amazon forest in Brazil, it's very bad news for all of us. They can't do that, you know? So we are all connected and we see it more and more clear all the time. And this gives me hope, because everywhere where I look, I see examples of ordinary people, entrepreneurs, visionary companies that are finding each other across the world in order to fix problems in their local environment or address global challenges that have historically been totally out of reach. Historically have been the territory of governments, huge institutions and organizations. Now there's like a 19-year-old kid sitting somewhere in the garage and trying to fix the pollution that is going on in the oceans, you know? And we see it everywhere. This gives me a lot of hope. Who am I? I'm a thirsty person. My name is Dennis Ривin. I'm from Copenhagen, Denmark, and I'm 33 years old. And in my entire life, I've had this inner struggle between optimism and pessimism, to such a degree that I had to invent a new concept. I call it optimism, where it's just the dual existence of both all the time. It's just, but so if I don't fight it, I will let myself consume with these negative energies and all the bad stuff going on. So I have to actively pursue and seek out the good things, because this influences me in order to be constructive and do anything about it. Actually, I have a background in art history from Copenhagen University, and I did a lot of cultural entrepreneurship. I published art magazines, I organized concerts and art exhibitions, I did activism and spoken word, I managed bands, I did all kinds of stuff until 4 years ago, where a good friend of mine, he was writing his thesis from the IT university about the future of the music industry, and I was sparring with him during this process, and suddenly I was just, my mind was just blown. I found out internet. Wow. At this point in time, I had been using internet for like 15 years myself, but I never thought it in this perspective. Like a fun fact for you, okay? Google. How many use Google to navigate the internet, to find information? Yes, I think this is representative for the entire world, actually. With Google, you have access to approximately 0.3% of the entire internet. This is a man-made cosmos that is so incredibly huge. That's why it's called to surf on the internet, because you're surfing on the surface of the internet. You don't even snorkel, you surface on the surface. Surf. Beneath the surface is what's called the deep web. This is relatively harmless. It's encrypted stuff, it's your email accounts, all kinds of accounts, intranet at work, whatever. Beneath the deep web is what's called the dark web. And what the dark web is, if you don't know, I think you should go home and Google it. So, I changed my focus completely. I enrolled at the IT university instead, because I felt, okay, future stuff, this is cool. I can actually have an influence. Instead of working with art history 300-400 years ago, I can have an influence on the future, and I need to do this, so that's what I did. So I enrolled, and one of the most important things that happened to me during my studies at the IT university had nothing to do with the curriculum, as it often goes. I found a quote by Martin Luther King from 1967, where he says, "Those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war." And I find this incredibly interesting. This resonates with me, because exactly this made sense. All these things that I see, that people are starting to organize themselves, you know? You can be sure of one thing, if you're ever in doubt of everything. In the entire world, the vastest majority of people, they want peace. It's always very few that fuck everything up for the rest. That's just the way it works. It takes very, very little bad to destroy a lot of good. Maybe it's the gravity, I don't know, but it takes much shorter time for a building to collapse than to build it. That's the way it works. So anyway, and this gives me hope also. And I want to share this hope. So let's look into it. The technologies that are changing the world. Most importantly, what is going on right now and will continue for the coming decades is that biology and technology is melting together. It's becoming one. And meaning artificial intelligence and biological intelligence also, And when I say these things, I know many people think about more or less dystopian popular culture. What is this? Where's the human in this equation? What about, is it robots coming here to kill us, destroy us, be our slaves, enslave us? What will it mean? So I would like to encourage you, when anyone talks about biology and technology morphing, becoming one, instead of Terminator, to think about this. Your grandparents. Cute ladies that are filled with titanium bones, contact lenses, hearing aids, pacemakers, and whatever you have. Technology and biology morphing is nothing new. Forever, people have used technology to relieve pain and prolong life. This is what we do, and this is what we use technology for. But now the difference is that we started to internalize technology, we put it inside our bodies. So yes, humanity will be changing. But this is not going to happen tomorrow, but it's important to notice. We're going to talk more about biotechnology in a little while. Technology, very important to notice, is neither good or bad. Technology just is. It only depends on how we use technology. And what is technology? We're going to talk about digital technologies now, but technology is basically anything man-made that we use to create, recreate, and optimize our living conditions with. So this remote is a technology, this screen is a technology, the chair, the cup, fire, horseshoes, everything basically a technology. And a kitchen knife is a technology. And I bet we all have a kitchen knife in our home. And I bet most of us just use it to create a really nice, delicious Russian salad or something. But somebody takes the same kitchen knife and kills somebody. That's how technology works. It's only the way we use it. So, digital technologies is everything that is changing the way we think, the way we feel, the way we interact socially, the way we work, the way we relax. Most aspects of our everyday lives. And that's why it's really important to start talking about what are these things? How are we interacting with these technologies? So, digitization. The primary thing going on with digitization is that everything that was before physical stops being physical and now is digital. Here's a fine example of all of your fathers standing here with a lot of equipment for a lot of money that all now fits in the palm of your hand and comes at a fraction of the price. Every application on your phone used to be a physical object. It's becoming digitized. There's a rule of thumb. Expect everything that can be digitized will be digitized. The good thing about digitization is that when it stops being physical, it becomes cheaper. And when it becomes cheaper, it becomes more accessible. So meaning that we have access to many tools that are completely ordinary now that used to be accessible only for people with a lot of money. So that's why people also talk about that digitization leads to democratization. More and more people have access to things. And now we also talk about that any person with a smartphone and access to the internet has access to more information and knowledge than the American president had just 20 years ago. And this is pretty incredible because do you know how many people have access to a smartphone with internet connection? More than 3.5 billion people. And what has happened the last 10 years' time is primarily an explosion within exchange of knowledge, exchange of ideas, and most importantly, the ordinary people's ability at solving problems. If you are sufficiently entrepreneurial or sufficiently desperate, you will try to fix the problems that you're facing, either locally or globally. If it annoys you, or if it annoys your life, then you can address it and do something about it. And there are a lot of people in the world that are either entrepreneurial, desperate, or both. This gives me hope also. It's in the development of the artificial intelligence that the true revolution lies. Artificial intelligence. Also, the reason for the speed is that the greediness of people makes us use the best computers we have to create even better computers all the time. This will not slow down. And with it emerges artificial intelligence, software that is able to think by itself and to learn by itself. It's called machine learning. So computers are programs that are designed for a purpose, and then they keep on getting smarter in that area forever. So a simple example is Siri. How many have an iPhone in here? Siri. Siri is the virtual assistant on Apple iPhone. All Androids, they have their own version of the virtual assistant. They have different names. Siri. Siri has access to the internet and all your applications and your calendar, and you can ask Siri all kinds of stuff, like book an appointment in my calendar, call my grandma, what is the weather in Copenhagen, how is Dennis doing, can you Google it, anything you want, basically. It's sort of a very broad kind of narrow artificial intelligence. She can do anything that you ask her, but if she doesn't have the answer, she's going to be like, I'm sorry, did you mean this or this? And then you're going to correct Siri. I mean this, Siri. And then Siri knows. And the thing is, Siri is not your little Siri. It's the same program that is installed on the servers of Apple. And as soon as you correct Siri, Siri knows this answer on behalf of humanity. And Siri has millions of these interactions daily. So she becomes smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. There's an interesting example. A few years ago, there was a suicidal man in England. And he asked Siri, Siri, I want to kill myself. I want to jump off a bridge and die. Where is the nearest bridge? And Siri, she was helpful. She was like, there's a bridge here, there's a bridge there. It's like from Tanka and Monka, whatever. You just choose a bridge, yo. And he actually jumped off a bridge and died. And that's tragic. But they found out of this at Apple. And then they corrected Siri. They fine-tuned Siri so she's better at translating human language into ones and zeros to the digital intelligence. And if you ask Siri the same thing now, she's going to be still helpful. She's like, all these bridges, but hey, are you seriously talking about suicide? Because then there's this suicide line, and should I call for you? And we can expect slowly Siri to become more and more knowledgeable about you as an individual. Definitely, this will come, where it's actually your personal assistant. So Siri, she can do anything. She can order pizza and check currency, whatever, all kinds of random stuff. Where it's becoming really interesting. So you can talk to Siri, but you can also type. So it's called also a chat bot. So there are different examples of chatbots. And one that is super interesting going on right now, it's a chatbot called Karim. It's a startup. They're developing Karim. Karim can't order pizza, check the weather, or anything. But what Karim does is, Karim has read thousands of books about human psychology. So Karim is an application that is a psychologist in your pocket. And they're doing this pilot project together with refugees from Syria. People that are traumatized on a daily basis have a strong need to work through these traumas, but they don't have access to therapists, that can't afford therapists, and also maybe they're dealing with a culture where therapy is kind of taboo. Yeah? But through a cheap application, probably also free, they can actually be working through their trauma on an everyday basis. This is pretty incredible. There's a guy also, I didn't bring this example, there's a 19-year-old guy in London who made his own chatbot and doesn't know anything about psychology or can't check the weather and anything, but it knows everything there is to know about the law of parking in London. Everything. And he uses this chatbot to make people who got a bad parking ticket, they just use the application and it's like 4 questions. Was this, this? And if everything is yes, it's just printing you out a completely legal document. You just give it to the municipality and you give your money back. The last 2 years they have paid more than 160,000 parking tickets back to the population. Okay, so this was the artificial intelligence very briefly. Now we move to biotechnology. Biotechnology, super important. If you should pick two technologies that you follow, take artificial intelligence and biotechnology. These are most important and will have most influence on our lives the coming decades. Biotechnology. The craziest thing that is going on with biotechnology is scientists around the world that are starting to discuss, or they start to treat death as an incredibly complicated disease for which we can find a cure, or at least postpone in an indefinite amount of time. That's really interesting and kind of scary. So, the most tangible thing that is going on with biotechnology is something called gene sequencing. We're able now to take an analysis of your DNA, send it in, and then you can scan your 30,000 genes in your DNA and get the results. In your DNA lies answers to all questions you have about yourself. Anything. You can get to know exactly how you need to sleep in order to have an optimal day. You can know exactly what kind of nutrition do you need on what times of day, in what quantities in order to function optimally, what kind of exercises you have to do in order to optimize your muscle mass, what kind of talents you actually have, which diseases will most probably kill you, and so on and so on. In your DNA lies the answers for everything. And now we keep having better and better access to this. That's why people also talk a lot about that we're moving away from generic treatment of disease towards an age of individualized precision medicine. If I have a headache, I don't want to eat the same 2 pills that everybody eats. I want a Dennis pill that works exactly the way I function. And we are nearing that. Within 10 years, we're going to see it for sure. Gene sequencing is a perfect example of the speed we're witnessing and the digitization, that anything becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So first time they sequenced an entire human genome was in 2001. It had taken 13 years and cost the same as NASA paid for this Curiosity rover to get it on the surface of Mars. Just 6 years later, same procedure took 2 months, cost the same as this supercar. In 2012, took 3 days, cost the same as a used whatever random car. In 2020, it will be more expensive to order a pizza than to have your entire genome sequenced. While in 2022, it will be more expensive to flush your toilet than to have your entire genome sequenced. And do you remember when I just said that expect everything that can be digitized will be digitized? So do you think that in 4 or 5 years' time, there will be digital smart toilets? Every single time you use them, they will analyze and scan all your values, and you will have just a notification on your smart device, whatever, just saying, hey, ooh, I can see something is a bit off here. I would recommend you not to stuff your face with pills, but hey, take 4 bites of an apple, eat half a banana, stand in the sun for 11.5 minutes, go have sex, anything that helps, you know? I believe so, definitely. And in this scenario, imagine how outdated our lives already are. When you go, you wait until you become sick. You have visual symptoms and you're like, I'm sick, I have to go to a doctor. Then you go to a doctor, you sit in a waiting room where you're exposed to more bacteria than you already have and need. And then you go to a, with all due respect, highly professional person that guesses what is wrong with you. No, thank you. I would rather know exactly what's wrong with me, and preferably months before I have visual symptoms. Very interesting. It will be changing the longevity of people. We will be living longer. Already now, during the 20th century, we have almost doubled the average living age of people around the globe. And experts think that during the 21st century, we will extend our living period with an additional 40 years. Imagine how this will change the proportions in life. The institutions, the way we live, the way we raise children. Imagine you can raise 2 children until their late 20s and you still have a solid 70 years left to live. Go have fun, travel, all these things, you know, or work hard, or, you know, whatever you do. It's interesting and it's coming. So, biotechnology. artificial intelligence, most important two areas, I think. Besides that, we have self-driving cars. How far is this technology? Very far. In November, next month, Tesla has promised they will have a Model S Tesla drive autonomously, fully autonomously between Los Angeles and New York, which is completely incredible. The amount of computational power you need to scan and analyze all these different terrains and weather conditions is unfathomable. You can't really understand it. It's amazing. And you know, then you go to a meeting. Yeah, the car drives you to a meeting, for example, or you go to your work. So you go out of your car, and what happens then? You run to a meeting. Yes, yes, yes. What does the car do? The car finds a parking spot, you know, and parks itself perfectly. You don't have to look for that shit anymore. Autonomous vehicles will change society dramatically. It's going to affect jobs, it's going to affect the way we work, and it's going to affect our social interactions. Drones, we have to do this a bit faster. If you want to go into depth, please come to me afterwards. I would love to speak with you. Drones, virtual reality, the experience machine. This lady is sitting in her office chair. She's not sitting in her office chair, she's doing the roller coaster. You know, she's experiencing a roller coaster. This is incredible. It will have a huge impact on education. And talking about education, assistive technology. Imagine this, you're in 3rd or 4th grade, and you sit in your classroom, and then the teacher is talking about whales. Whales exist, whales are huge, and you're like, oh, whales, wow, sound huge. How huge, like as big as my hand, or bigger, or what? Would you prefer that? Or would you prefer to go down to the gym together with all your classmates, and then see a whale, jump up from the floor? Now you know what a whale is, you know? Stop talking about the whale, see a whale. This is called augmented reality. So instead of virtual reality where you have the mask, you watch through a lens and it manipulates the reality you're in actually. It's gonna change a lot of things. Robotics, look at this. Oh no, I'm a drunk robot on my way home. You know, it looks funny, it looks silly, but this is a 350 kilogram robot walking on ice in a forest, yeah? Amazing. This will also change a lot of things. Then we have 3D printing. This is an example from Russia. 3D printers come in very different sizes. So some 3D printers, they print houses, will be much cheaper, will be much faster to build housing, new kind of materials. Other printers are much smaller. So there are experiments right now going on a lot with 3D printed synthetic food that is nutritious and tastes good. Also, a lot of experiments with human organs. Many things are going on, and of course, whatever kind of fabric, you can print that also. Then you have nanotechnology. I found this, I'm so happy I found this example because it's difficult to talk about nanotechnology because it's something you can't see. But this is a 0.05 millimeter long robot that is swirling around a lazy sperm cell and pushes it into an egg of a woman, inside a woman. Okay? This is called mechanized sperm within assisted reproduction. Incredible. Then you have neurotechnology, you have quantum computers, you have incredible progress within the space industry, privatization of space industry, space tourism, colonization of planets, mining on asteroids, bitcoins and blockchain, and congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, we are having the first front row to an energy revolution. The achievements we are witnessing within sustainable energy, our ways to capture solar energy and store it in batteries are exposed to exactly the same mechanics as the other technologies we have talked about. They're becoming better and better and cheaper, and we are seeing it everywhere. It's amazing. So now, yeah, I went a bit fast through this. Usually I have a break here, but you can forget about that. Talking about the mentality, also with these sustainable energies. So the second thing I came along with at the IT University, besides the quote of Martin Luther King, was that I found a marketing study in branding where they did a scientific study of the neurology of a human, where they found out that if you expose a person to one bad thing about a product, it takes 6 positive things to neutralize the person's impression of this product. This says a lot about two things. First, our biological brain is still biological, and it is subject to the slow evolution. The technological evolution is much, much faster. And our brains work exactly as they did 10,000 years ago, you know, where survival was the most important thing in your life. Survival, not to die. What should I do today? Not die. That's it. Whatever else you do, that's up to you. And being afraid was key, you know. If something shakes in the bush, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go home. Then you survive. And the person who's like, oh, something shakes in the bush, you know, and that's a sable tiger that's gonna eat you, you know, that's it. So fear and being afraid, it's very intuitive inside of us. And that's why we react so much to fear and negative things. And this says so much about the world we live in terms of media and news. Imagine how much negativity we are bombarded with continuously every single day about breaking news, about bullshit that breaks, people that die, and politicians that lie and are corrupt. Per definition, it's not even news. A fascist idiot becoming president in America, it's not news. We have seen this before, you know? It's not news. What is news is the collective growth, the technological advancements, the new opportunities, things that we have never been able to accomplish before are becoming accomplishable. That's news. That's what I want to see. Not this, all the time, the same thing. So in terms of mentality, one thing that is super important to talk about also is within business leadership. Within business leadership, I witness it everywhere I look, because there's this thing, historically speaking now, we have destroyed our world to such a degree that it's not really profitable to destroy it anymore. But on the other hand, all these technologies that come along, they make it profitable to start fixing the world. So there's a mantra emerging right now, within startup culture definitely, and also within very influential business leaders. It's called the biggest business opportunities are in the biggest problems. If you want to be a billionaire, help a billion people. And I see it everywhere because it makes sense. And people start to do it like this. Even big oil and gas companies, it's becoming profitable to invest in solar and wind instead of oil and gas. And they do it because profit maximizing businesses, they don't really care how they get filthy, disgusting rich. If they destroy planet, then they destroy planet. If they fix the planet, they just fix the planet. And now they start to fix the planet. So, examples of the way media work. I think this is a really, it's a very fresh example. I just found it. We see a lot of with natural disasters these days, and some hurricanes in the Americas there have been, and all these things, and we see all these natural disasters and climate change and all these things. And it's true, they happen and people die and it's tragic, but historically speaking, this is exactly how it looks like during the 20th century and now where we are, in terms of all these kind of natural disasters and the amount of people that die. What is important to notice here is this is the correct amount of people that are dying, but between here and here, there are 5 billion more people on the planet. Do you understand what I mean? We are many, many more people, but fewer and fewer are dying even than before. We're just better at projecting when it's going to hit. We're better at protecting ourselves. We know it a longer time in advance, and so on and so on. So, other things that are pretty nice that I think you should focus on instead of the news. So these are the countries that are actively working away from coal, which is the biggest polluter in the world. Already this year, Belgium and Scotland, they're 100% off from coal. And these other countries are following suit. And this is their target for 2030. That's in 12 years. Do you know what happened 12 years ago? All kinds of stuff. But what didn't happen 12 years ago was smartphone and social media didn't exist. Okay? Within the next 12 years, we can't even foresee what's going to happen. And I bet you that there will be a longer list of countries that are working away from coal, because solar, wind is nice. All these automakers are working completely 100% electric vehicles. Again, towards 2030, exchanging all models, some of them, some are more conservative. This is nice, because solar energy, we can have electric vehicles that drive more or less for free. News, the globalization that is going on right now. Norway is threatening Brazil, talking of the rainforest, with a fine of $1 billion if they don't stop destroying the rainforest, because it's affecting all of us. They can't just do that any longer. It affects all of us. And I think this is a very good sign of how the globalization is working. Malaria. There's been a vaccine on the way for 30 years. It's just ready. They're going to test it for 2018 in 3 different countries in Africa. Then we have in China, they're experimenting with different kinds of food that can grow in salt water. This has never happened before. Virtual reality, they found out in America. They did a test on patients in burn victims in hospitals that go through very painful treatments every single day. They found out that virtual reality works more pain relieving than morphine. This says so much about 2 things. That first of all, these technologies are going to work in ways we cannot foresee at all. Virtual reality is a gaming machine, but suddenly it has a really powerful role to play in the medicine industry. And the second thing is, we don't understand our own brain at all. All scientists, all these technological discoveries and advancements, one thing people don't understand yet is the human brain. Don't even talk about consciousness. Human brain is the most complicated object in the known universe. Did you know this? In our human brain, there are more than 10 billion neurons. Every single neuron has access to 10,000 different other neurons. It's the most complicated object in the universe. And within the next 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, I bet you there's going to be discoveries, exciting, interesting discoveries where we find out how we actually work. And it will improve us to become a better species that is more intelligent. In India, this July, 1.5 million people met and planted 66 million trees during 12 hours. This is incredible. This is what I'm talking about. This is mass collaboration. People have access to each other and can organize and do something. This will have definitely an incredible impact on this region in India. And that's what we can do. And most interestingly also, I think we're talking so much about young people. Young people, the millennials, they're lazy, they don't do anything, they just sit with their face in Facebook and Snapchat, all these things. There are 1.8 billion people between 15 and 29 in the world. 87% of them live in developing countries. 87%. And historically speaking, young people have never been so actively engaged in trying to fix the world, because we're exposed to it to such a degree. All our parents fucked everything up so much that we have to react on it, we have to do it, because it's our future that is just crumbling away. And people are doing it. This gives me a lot of hope. A cow. I'm gonna drink. How's the time?
20 minutes.
Sorry? Perfect. I'm gonna slow down. Okay, so the cow. I love this thing with people coming together in order to solve problems. And there's a theory called wisdom of the crowds. In 1906, there was an English scientist. He was walking around and he found a competition where he had to guess the weight of a cow. And he was a bit evil, this guy. So he wanted to collect all the guesses in order to prove that people are stupid. Nobody could guess the weight of the cow he wanted to prove, and nobody could. But what he discovered instead was that if you take the average of all these guesses and put them together, they were less than 1% off the truth. And this is a theory that's been called wisdom of the crowds, and it's been proven over and over and over and over again, that if you have a substantially large group of people that is sufficiently diverse, the average of these people's guess on anything will always be closer to the truth than any individual in the group. Again, it says so much about the way our brains work. It's a phenomenon that is a bit spooky almost, because we can't, well, how should we engage with it? But we see it in nature so much also with ants and bees and fish and birds. Individually, they're extremely dumb. But together, in a crowd, they do amazing things, like birds, all these things. How do they do that? We don't know. How do bees collectively construct architectural masterpieces of this little annoying houses, inside? If you go into a beehive, like architects agree that it's the most optimal way of constructing any structure. If humans could live like that, we would be doing that. It's not cool for humans, but bees love it. And that's what counts. So this phenomenon is called swarm intelligence. Swarm intelligence, that if we do stuff together, something happens that we don't really understand. Very interesting. And also it's called crowdsourcing. Wikipedia is an example of crowdsourcing, like millions of people collectively disposing their cognitive capacity in order to work together collectively on creating the largest knowledge database in the history of humanity that has previously would have like only the richest person in the world would have access to this kind of knowledge. Now it's just common knowledge. Everybody has access to Wikipedia, and everybody is helping each other to keep it more or less true. So that's called crowdsourcing. What I find also very interesting to talk about is crowdfunding, the monetary dirty brother of crowdsourcing, with money, you know. And crowdfunding is an example in the world. Maybe you're familiar with Kickstarter. It's a site, probably you also have a Russian version, but it's basically a site where people pay a bit to realize each other's projects, and it's mostly products and stuff like that. I don't find that very interesting. But what I do find interesting is that, you know, when people collectively pay a bit in order to create a big, large sum of money. And we saw this spring, for example, in the States, where the Congress, they voted for a law that is like in 2017 is just an insult. It's a perfect example of how governments work sometimes, not to make the people happy, but just because they're corporate lapdogs. So they passed on this law where they allow telcos, like telecommunication companies and internet providers and all these things, to take your search history and sell it to third parties. Like your search history. This concerns nobody. Your search history, it's a very private thing. If I think that, you know, I need to learn more about Nazism and I check that out, somebody can buy that data and then, you know, just make it look like I'm a fucking Nazi next week, you know? I don't want that. It's my thing. So why would they vote for that? It's not for the benefit of the population. So what happened in the days after was crowdfunding campaigns. Ordinary people, you and me, started to just initiate crowdfunding campaigns where thousands of people joined. I took a snapshot just on the day. Within 3 days, they were up on $300,000. And this money is marked for one purpose. As soon as this law is passed, the very first search history that is bought and publicly displayed is on every single Congress member that voted for this law. Do you follow me? Yeah. This is interesting. You can take 5 rubles, 10 rubles, 100 rubles, whatever you have, just put it in the pot and suddenly it's going to be a large sum of money. And you can oppose to incompetent politics in ways that have not been possible before, or greedy industry, or whatever you find that is bothering you. This is interesting. There's another example from Norway talking about Nazis. In Norway this summer, the Nazis, they proclaimed they're going to have a march against homosexuals. There's a thing with homosexuals in Russia, I know, but would you prefer Nazis or homosexuals? I don't know, you can decide later. But so Nazis were like, we're going to march against them. Yeah, top one of our problems in the universe. So they would march, and young people in Norway, they were like, what can we do about this? How can we just show that we disagree? We can't deny them freedom of speech, that's a no-go. Should we confront them violently on the street? No thanks, it's Saturday, I would rather just watch a movie. Or should you make a peaceful demonstration? You could, but what's the point, you know, no result. So instead they did a crowdfunding campaign where they collected 1 Norwegian krone per person per meter the Nazis walked. And this became, there were like thousands of Norwegian people that came along with this crowdfunding campaign, and it became a huge sum of money that would be donated to the biggest LGBT organization in Norway. So the Nazis, they were marching, and for every meter they went, they were collecting money for the same purpose they were marching against. Do you follow me? This is an interesting, humoristic example of how you can use these ways of organizing and communicating to oppose anything you want, non-violently, but interestingly, using the technologies that are disposable. Very last example. In the US, there's this university called MIT. This year, they had a global competition with a money prize of $250,000. to the individual or the group of people that could expose create civil disobedience, non-violent civil disobedience for the benefit of society. I find this incredibly interesting, and also it gives me hope because this is a very conventional institution that takes a very bold step in a direction to publicly say, hey, we're part of this society, but the laws and regulations, they can't follow the progress we're witnessing right now. We have to think differently. And so many people, they want to improve society, but they can't really because we have these strict, rigid rules. And politicians that don't get me started. So, interesting, disobedience, civil disobedience, a lot of money. To end this, I would like to say this. We now live in what's called the fourth industrial revolution. It has begun already. The first industrial revolution brought with it steam engine. Amount of factories in the world exploded, and it made us able to mechanize production. The second industrial revolution gave us electricity in order to create mass production. The third industrial revolution gave us electronics and IT to automate production. And you'd still think we live in this, but no, we have moved on to the fourth industrial revolution that is morphing, combining the digital, physical, and biological. And different to the first three industrial revolutions that changed what we do and how, this current industrial revolution is changing who we are. Literally. And that's why there has never, ever been a better time to start talking about who we would like to become. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое. У нас есть время на несколько вопросов. Есть ли вопросы к Денису?
No one?
Okay. Do you think we became a bit happier having all this social media? So I think just sometimes they are substituting our real life, and how to deal with it.
In general, social media kind of sucks. But the thing is that everything is new. Everything is new. It's taken 10 years or less, for all these new things to start influencing our lives, and people are stressing a lot about it. But it takes very long time for us to get used to it and to understand how to behave. I see Facebook, for example, as one of the grandest rookie mistakes of the internet era. And people will bitterly regret what they posted. I promise you that too. Internet never forgets. But it just takes time. You have to learn how to navigate. The good thing about Facebook is that it has become the first global university, free university in online behavior. People are slowly realizing how to behave, but everything is slowly changing, and we're walking into an age of transformation where we have to learn how to navigate through it. It takes time, but I'm pretty sure that at some point we will learn and we will start, in general, social media and all our applications. I'm talking a lot about, positive things here. I don't ignore the bad. It's not about ignoring the bad. You can't do that. But the point is, you have to actively seek out the good because nobody is presenting it for you. You have to actively see all the improvements that are going on, because only through that you can start realizing and thinking about a future that is different and better than the world you are constantly bombarded with is exactly as shitty as you remember it from yesterday. But we have some very big issues right now with applications being made like digital drugs, like literally digital drugs. They're designed for your brain to work in a specific way where you're addicted. You want to check it all the time. It's not your fault. It's really, they are designed to do that, to keep you addicted and keep you all the time online. And at some point, maybe when enough people find out about this, It's slowly starting now. You see a lot of influential people that are trying to oppose this a lot in Silicon Valley. Like Silicon Valley is slowly becoming this kind of evil empire in the world where they just do these things, but at the same time they send their own kids to schools where computers are like not allowed and no smartphones and notebooks and all these things. So yeah, there are like I said, all of these technologies can be used for good or for bad. It's up to us how we use it. I would prefer if we use it kind of for good, or try at least. But many people won't, and we just have to be aware of this, at least.
Еще вопросы?
Come on, guys, let's talk. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the lecture. And my question, do you think that robot, like artificial intelligence, can be in near future be a citizen of any country? Can become a citizen of any country, like the same as I and you?
I don't know if this is a trick question, because what happened today or yesterday is that Saudi Arabia, they have pronounced a robot to be the first citizen of a country in the world. So it's not a trick question, yeah? But that happened, and that's just, it's crazy. But they're doing some crazy shit there. Oh my God. Saudi Arabia, like women can go on the street alone without a man, but they give a citizenship to a fucking robot. Like, get your shit together before you start doing that. I don't, yeah, of course. The artificial intelligence, there's this thing, and it's also a perfect time in history to start discussing what is intelligence. What is intelligence? We're facing an artificial intelligence that we do not understand how will become at some point in time where its IQ is 1,000 or 12,000 or number X. We don't know how it will behave. We don't know what it will be like. So we have to, it's like many people, and people think that it will surpass our own level of intelligence around 2049 or something like that. There are many different theories, but again, within the next decades. Some people use the example, it's like, if you knew that aliens from a different planet will visit the planet, our planet, within the next 20 years, would you just be like, yeah, we'll see at that point? Or would you start preparing now, like how to engage with this dialogue? So yeah, definitely artificial intelligence is a very interesting thing, and we don't know what it will be like at all. And it's kind of scary. It will help us in many, many ways, but it's also definitely scary if we can't control it. And a pretty annoying thing is that right now, all this amazing innovation that is happening around the world, it's primarily corporates. It's private companies, because we're dealing with so many politicians and governments that are basically, in my opinion, cowards that do not think very long into the future. It's all about being re-elected and all these things. So they don't, it's going to be monopolized by private companies. And how will they use this? I don't know. Was that kind of an answer?
Yeah.
Thank you. Еще вопросы?
Yeah.
У нас есть время буквально на один.
Thank you very much for the lecture. I want to ask kind of maybe philosophical question, sort of that. We're always talking about the good sides of technologies, about how they improve our life, prolong some life, make it better and easier. But speaking about kind of bad sides of technologies, if we try to kind of compare them somehow, kind of their values, sort of that. I don't know how to ask it correctly, but how do you really think, does it worth it? In the future, we're gonna have like more kind of bad side of technologies or more improvements caused by these technologies?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know is the quickest answer, definitely. It's very difficult to see. Also, like one of my main points is that we cannot decide how future will be. We cannot decide it. We have no idea how it would be like in 12 years. The more we know about things, the less we can predict how it's going to be, because more and more things can interact and create things that we couldn't foresee. So the only thing I can promise you is going to be pretty interesting. And good and bad, you know, it depends. It depends on what will happen. I see so many signs because I quit news. Like I quit like smoking or heroin or crack or whatever. I quit news. Conventional news, I just can't deal with it. I can't be bombarded with all the negative things. It's not about ignoring it, I understand. Like, try quitting news and try not hearing that people are dying. You know, all your friends will be telling you, don't worry, you'll find out. But you have to actively find these good things. So you have to curate your own news feed. You have to get newsletters, for example, newsletters, or use Reddit if you're familiar with this. Reddit, it's an American site. It's a huge forum consisting of like thousands, millions, I don't know, of sub-forums where it's ordinary people that decide what is interesting, what has been posted already and what is interesting today. They upvote and downvote each other's news. Regardless of your interest, you will find something there. Yeah, the only thing I can promise you is definitely future is going to be different. And there will be a transition period where we have to get used to this. All these technologies, like self-driving cars, in America, for example, the biggest segment in the workforce, that's drivers. It's like 16% of the entire workforce in the States. And it's not about cars, it's about transportation. Like it's trucks, cars, delivery vehicles, ships, planes, all these things, you know. And many people will start being unemployed. I don't talk about these things. We have the happy focus today. But technological unemployment is a huge thing. But again, it's not tomorrow. We have time to adjust to these things. But we have to it's up to us. Because obviously, I don't know about Russia, but in Denmark, it's not something politicians talk about. They're very focused on, you know, fixing problems that belong to the 20th century, which is super crazy. But, you know, yeah.
Спасибо большое. Мы вынуждены заканчивать. У нас впереди еще 2 лекции. Я думаю, Денис не откажется ответить в частном порядке на несколько вопросов. Спасибо большое, что вы пришли. Спасибо большое за выступление, Денис.